The Teen Titans. Teen Titans is my personal favorite cartoon and TV show in general of all time. I loved it back when I was a kid when it first started coming out, and love it even more now that I'm older and can understand and appreciate it more. It tackles personal themes and lessons, as well as having mindless fun action to create a show that can be enjoyed by people of all ages. It's my favorite version of this team bar none, and showcases my favorite version of these characters as well. If I'm completely honest, outside of this show, I wasn't the biggest fan of the Teen Titans. Don't get me wrong, I love Nightwing and Starfire in the comics in the DCAU, but the team in general just doesn't hit the same outside of this version for me. But this is why this version is so great. It made some characters I didn't really know or care about some of my favorite characters of all time. It made a non-Teen Titan fan a Teen Titan fan, and became a favorite show in the process. And recently, I've been feeling nostalgic and decided to rewatch the series. And since I'm bored and have nothing else better to do, I've come to share with you all my personal thoughts and opinions on the show and just talk about the show in general. So without further ado, Titans, go! Season 1 is one of the 3 most memorable seasons for me, and I'd assume for many other people as well. Which makes sense considering this was the first introduction to these characters. Now when it comes to the first episode, things get a little confusing since the episode Final Exam was the first to air, but Divide and Conquer is the first on the DVD releases and chronologically in Season 1. And I will be using this as reference when speaking on this season. One thing I will say though, having the team have a fallout and one of them leave the team on the first episode is a crazy way to start a series. This would be our first impression of this version of these characters, so we would have no real reason to care about this version of them, so why would we care if Cyborg leaves right away? The show wouldn't have earned a reaction to it, which is possibly why it was the 3rd episode to air, so we can learn and care more for this version of the team. On rewatches though, this episode feels a lot better since you already have an attachment to this team. But I could see someone who has never seen this show before start with this episode and not really feel anything or care about the Cyborg leaving plotline. But what I do like about this episode is how they show how much the Titans do care for each other through each of their reactions to Cyborg leaving and Robin's guilt for causing him to leave. Cyborg leaving may not have much meaning to you at first, but towards the end, the episode has given you enough to be happy and relieved when he returns. I still feel like having an episode where one of the Titans leave should have been saved for later on in the series, when the characters are more fleshed out, and it kinda also happens during the season finale with Robin becoming Slade's apprentice, even if he leaves for a completely different reason. Also, this won't be the last time Cyborg leaves the team because it strangely becomes a reoccurring theme, but more on that later. I also wanted to talk about how this season shows us the dynamic between the Titans and shows their growth in their relationships and as individuals. One thing I really like about this show is most of the episodes have 1 or 2 Titans the episode is focusing on. Divide and Conquer, Robin and Cyborg. Sisters, Starfire and Robin. Forces of Nature, Beast Boy and Starfire. Some of his parts, Cyborg. Nevermore, Raven, Beast Boy and Cyborg. Switched, Starfire and Raven. Deep Six, Beast Boy. Masks, Robin. Car Trouble, Raven and Cyborg. And if you notice, they're all different combination of Titans as well. So we can really see the bond and relationship with all the Titans and not just a whole bunch of Robin and Starfire or Beast Boy and Cyborg and just assume that Cyborg is good friends with Robin or Starfire is close with Raven with hardly any interaction between them. And the leftover episodes I didn't mention, like Final Exam, Detention, and Apprentice Parts 1 and 2, may not focus on individual Titans or relationships between the few, but shows them as a team. And don't misunderstand me either. These episodes may focus heavily on a few Titans, but each episode still does a great job at showing dynamics of the team that aren't the main focus. Like in Sisters, we get Beast Boy and Cyborg's friendship, and in Final Exam, we get the whole missing remote scene. Little scenes like these are all over this series in every episode that gradually shows and grows the dynamic of this team even when they aren't the focus of the episode. Next thing I'd like to talk about from this season is the villains. With this being the first season, the introduction of the villains are, I'd say, just as important as the Teen Titans themselves. Even with a great main cast, if we had weak, boring, one-dimensional villains, the show would feel so much more lackluster. But let me tell you, that is not the case. Let's start in order of appearance. First villain we see is Cinderblock, and I think he's the perfect villain to start with. Now while I might have just trashed on one-dimensional villains, obviously it works for some, and for Cinderblock it works perfectly. He doesn't need to be fleshed out, he's really just there to show us what our heroes can do and what their powers are and how they work as a team, or in this case, lack thereof. Plasmus is somewhat in the same boat, but with a little more depth. We get a part of his character with the sleeping man and how he only becomes Plasmus when he's awake. And in all honesty, Plasmus may be the most tragic character of this series. I mean, you're forced into a coma for your whole life where you turn into a raging sludge monster. And I'm assuming the reason why he just stays asleep in the first place is because he's probably holding out for a cure that'll probably never happen. Anyway, Plasmus also shows us how the Titans fight as a team. But not only that, he also shows how they adapt to certain situations and enemies. Plasmus' abilities are also quite confusing. At first I thought Plasmus was just some goo that encompassed the man's body, kinda like a Venom Eddie Brock situation. But if that were the case, when Starfire shoots him with the starbolt, it would have either exposed the man's body or would have shot straight through him and killed the guy. Also later, when he splits into pieces, there would have been no place for his body to fit. Unless he's in like the fetal position, then maybe he can fit in like the head when they split up, and that's why we don't see him when Starfire shoots a hole in his chest. But I don't think that's the case. I believe when the man is awake, he morphs into Plasmus, since when he first transforms, you see his face and body stretch and change, and it would also explain how he could split up or have holes shot through him without us seeing the man inside. But again, this doesn't really make sense considering they beat Plasmus by exploding him and the guy is shown just lying there. If he does morph into Plasmus, then exploding him shouldn't cause him to revert back, since the goo shooting everywhere would be parts of him. I guess it's just up to interpretation, and whichever you feel makes the most sense, since both arguments can be made and have contradictions at the same time. Next villain is Blackfire. Blackfire is where we start getting fully fleshed out characters as our villains. She has a close relationship with one of the main heroes, being Starfire's sister, and she's so much more than just strong bad guy the Titans have to beat. She's manipulative, weasels her way into the Titans' friend group, constantly puts Starfire down and makes her feel worthless, and all at the same time is planning to have Starfire take the fall for her crimes. The only nice gesture she shows to Starfire by giving her the necklace was just a part of that plan, considering that was a thing that Blackfire was being chased for in the first place. She keeps trying to distract all the Titans and take them away from Starfire. Her idea to go to the club and have fun and party was just a way for her to distract the Titans again so they wouldn't notice Starfire being taken, and even constantly pulls Robin away from her. She takes Starfire's clothes and even puts on a pink wig to mimic Starfire further. Even though she is a very strong character, she's shown to use her cunning, manipulation, and emotional tactics to really show who she is as a character and how different she is from Starfire, even though they are related, which makes her a much better villain and character in general. It also makes it feel that much better when she's defeated in the end. Just as she's about to get away with it, Robin figures it out and Starfire finally hits her limit and confronts her sister instead of being passive like she was the whole episode. There's so much payoff to Starfire's confrontation and Blackfire's defeat that only exists because of how well written of a character and villain Blackfire is. Next up, one of the most iconic villains of the series, we get the Hive. The Hive at first consists of Jinx, Gizmo, and Mammoth. We get more later on, but this is the core of the team. Jinx is the leader of the team and has a very graceful way of fighting, and her power is the use of bad luck. Now, we don't get too much from Jinx or the rest of the team in this episode or season as individuals, but we don't really need to. This is an episode about them as a team, but we still do get glimpses of personality from each of them. Jinx has a very sly and quippy attitude, and she loves using those bad luck puns a little too much. Gizmo is a small genius who uses his intellect to not only build weapons he uses in a fight, but also to strategize ways to use them and get the upper hand on his adversaries. He's also very cocky and he loves to trash talk and comes up with the most unique names to call people.
Don't buses normally have drivers?
And don't baby carriages normally have babies?
Are you pit sniffers normally this stupid? Ah! That was too easy. What a bunch of kludge heads. Gee, Scrum Buffer. Sure hope your fancy plan includes getting fried. So, Tin Man, you got a heart under all that outdated crudware? Let me go, you scuzz-a-munch and zit! Have a nice afterlife, you snot-eating losers!
Lastly, Mammoth is the muscle of the team, and he is the epitome of the big brawn, no brain type of character. As a team, they are very well coordinated, and in their first two encounters with the Titans, they absolutely dismantle them, literally. And outside of fights, they are shown to be just like the Titans in a way, where they are all just a team of friends who also just hang around and chill. When the Titans do their final attack on the Hive's loss doesn't seem forced or unearned either. And this episode makes it clear why Robin is leader and needed on the team even without powers, given how, during the fight with the Hive in the tower, they just seemed lost and had no clue what to do, but when Robin returns with a literal beacon of hope, they were able to come up with a plan and defeat them. Anyways, they get a second win to fight back and come up with a plan now that they've seen what the Hive can do. They use the arm Gizmo took from Cyborg to sneak back in. They bring all the Hive members to the roof. They bait Gizmo into jumping on Cyborg again to shut down his gadget backpack, and they use Jinx's luck against her. And then they were able to team up on Mammoth in the end. The Hive were such good enemies, not only because they have their own personalities that only keep getting more and more expanded upon each time we see them, but they also forced and helped our team become a better team and work better as one. Next we have Thunder and Lightning. And even though they have their own personalities and character traits, they're really just there to be a mirror for Beast Boy. Although, I do really like them and wish we could have seen so much more from them throughout the series. Mumbo Jumbo is a classic villain that honestly doesn't show up as often as I remember, but I wish he did because he's one of my favorites. He's just a fun villain you can't help but love. And then Fix It from the same episode serves as kind of a reflection to Cyborg and shows what could happen to him if he ignores his human side and shows Cyborg the importance of his humanity. Alright, so Dr. Light's next. I mean, I kinda like Dr. Light. I love the running gag where he's constantly terrified of Raven and just gives up immediately every time he sees her, but I will have to say he is pretty forgettable, to be honest. I mean, because I literally forgot him at first. I didn't have him written down at all. I'm at the point where I'm at the end of editing this video and I just remembered about him at the very end. It's most likely just because he was at the beginning of Nevermore, which is such a great episode and has so much to it that maybe at the end you just kind of forget he was even there. I don't think it has anything to do with his actual character, because he is a character that every time he shows up I don't mind it, and he's one of the characters that before I came back to the series was a villain that I actually kind of remembered. Puppet King and Triton are kind of very forgettable enemies, but both serve their purpose of showing our team's growth through Starfire and Raven switching bodies and learning more about each other, and then Beast Boy humbling himself a bit and learning to accept help from other people. Now Red X in this season is just Robin in disguise, but I will still include him in this because he was the one who the Titans were trying to stop the whole episode. Red X is such an iconic and important character to this series. It first shows Robin's obsession with Slade and how he's willing to do just about anything to catch him, but also shows the trust issues within the team as a result, and becomes one of Robin's biggest regrets. Mad Mod is another mumbo-jumbo type villain, just there to create a fun episode to give us a break and mental breather from the overarching plotline of the season. But Mumbo and Mad Mod are still great because they're just fun villains to watch. Overload is another one of those Cinderblock and Plasmus type enemies that are usually just used as henchmen, but was the team's hardest fight to adapt to until they found out his weakness of water, which then makes him a not so scary or hard to beat villain. And then, the villain we've all been waiting for, Slade. Slade was first shown to us in the episode Divide and Conquer as a mysterious, shadowy figure. His smooth, booming voice and the way he presents himself commands respect. He is a smart strategist and a skilled fighter. His ability to keep the Titans guessing and staying one step ahead of them makes him such a tough enemy and one of the most iconic villains not only to the Teen Titans show, but in TV shows in general. I mean, he had Robin shaking at the knees and frothing at the mouth just by his mere mention. He knew Red X was Robin, he knew how to separate Robin from the team, and he knew how to get Robin to do exactly what he wants. His aura as a villain has yet to be matched by anyone, save Trigon in Season 4. But now I'd like to talk about his plan in this season, and the overarching story of this season in general. Now, Slade does state in Apprentice Part 1 that he's been looking for an apprentice, and everything he's been doing was to test Robin, as he believed Robin was perfect for the role. But I don't think that was the original plan from the start. In Divide and Conquer, he sends Cinderblock to free Plasmus. Then, while Plasmus distracts the Titans, he sends Cinderblock to commence Phase 3. We never see what Phase 3 is since Cyborg defeats Cinderblock off screen, but it doesn't seem this plan was made to just simply test the Titans or Robin, especially when after Plasmus and Cinderblock were defeated, he is visibly angry and upset his plans were thwarted. Now, we aren't told or shown what his plan was or what he was trying to accomplish, but I do think that this is where he became interested in the Titans. His next move was to send the Hive, but not to test the Hive as he claims, but to really test the Titans. I also think, if he wasn't already, this is where the plan shifted from the Titans in general and focused more on Robin, since Final Exam shows how great of a leader and how skilled he is. When we see him again in Masks, it's also the first time we see his robot henchman. His plan in Masks is also kind of unclear. We again aren't told or shown what his plan was with the chips he was stealing or why he even wanted them. Maybe he needed them for the laser and fake bomb he uses in Apprentice. Or maybe it has a separate unknown purpose. I feel like there had to have been a separate plan for the chips that we just never get to see or hear about. Then finally, in the two-part season finale, we see his last plan spring into action. After all the tests he's given to Robin, he is finally pleased and decides Robin is the perfect fit for his apprentice. His final plan was to get the Titans away from Robin by making Cinderblock pull Robin aside, and given Robin's hubris and his obsession with stopping Slade no matter what, he tells the Titans to leave him and focus on stopping the bomb. Now, it does make sense to focus the bomb. At this point, they don't know it's a dud, and since it's been shown Cyborg can solo Cinderblock, it's safe to assume Robin could as well. But they don't need all four of them to chase after the bomb, since when they catch up to it, they're all just standing around watching Cyborg disarm it anyways. Starfire could have easily stayed and helped Robin, which would have ruined Slade's plan, so him just assuming they'd leave Robin on his own to fight Cinderblock was a crazy Hail Mary play. Granted, it is Slade, so he probably had contingencies in case of this. Regardless, with the Titans pulled away, he leads Robin to his lair for a real face-to-face, since the one in mask was just a robot, and he shoots a laser that doesn't harm the Titans upon impact, but inserts tiny nanobots into their bloodstream that he can activate at any time unless Robin does what he says. The way Slade was defeated was by his own mistake. During one of the fights with Robin against his team, Robin doesn't obey Slade's command to use the blaster and even tries to speak with Starfire, so he activates the nanobots. But after Robin begs him to stop and obeys him, he turns them off. The nanobots should have been a last resort, and once used, that should have been it. But because he pulled the trigger on it early, and used it as a way to get Robin to behave, it got the Titans wise to his plan, and to why Robin betrayed them in the first place, which ultimately led to the Titans showing up at Slade's base and led them to beating Slade. Overall, Season 1 was such a great opener to a series with iconic villains and episodes, and could be an understandable choice as someone's favorite season. A few more things I'd like to touch on about this season that I couldn't find a way to fit anywhere. Cyborg is shown throughout the series to seemingly be second in command. All the times he has yelled the famous lines, "Titans go," and all the times Robin has been separated from the group, he'd take control. And I just think it's cool we kind of get that chain of command shown to us. A couple of not as important things are, this scene right here pisses me off. I mean, you have Starfire over here pouring her heart out to this guy, and then the boy Blunder decides he wants to start soy-facing over a bunch of fireworks and just completely interrupt her. And speaking of the episode's sisters, this episode is very well animated. Like, I mean noticeably better than the rest of the season and even series as a whole. Don't get me wrong, the animation is great throughout, but look at these scenes. They are just so well made, and every time I rewatch the show, it sticks out more and more how much better it is. It's insane. This motherfucking Gizmo sucks ass at centering. He says a little to the left, but then he waits till he goes too far to the left, then says it's perfect. Like, no man, that shit is so off center. It pisses me off every time. If you don't move that thing 5 more inches to the right, I am going to lose it. And the last thing I'd like to mention for Season 1 is the sneak peek we get at Trigon. I almost wish we hadn't seen him in this episode. It should have just been Red Cloak Raven, which represents her anger. Especially since when Trigon is defeated, he turns into the Red Cloak Raven, showing that it was just a powered up Red Cloak Raven to begin with. Having it just be a giant Red Cloak Raven instead would have been better. It fits the theme of all the different ravens, it fulfills the same purpose to show her anger and demonic side taking over and growing stronger, and it would leave Trigon to his big reveal in Season 4. Imagine if we don't see Trigon until Season 4. His first appearance, his eyes on a wall and a dark ominous voice in Raven's head would lead up nicely and bring huge suspense to his reveal in the end part 1. It would have been such a cool reveal, but we already know who he is, so him jumping out of the portal and him just being eyes on a wall aren't as hype anymore. After all of that, I'd like to share my personal top 5 favorite episodes from Season 1. Number 5, Sisters. It's so well animated. I'll take anything I can get from the Robin and Starfire relationship as well, and I mean Blackfire is just a great character in general. Number 4, Detention. The most fun episode of Season 1, and that has my favorite sequence of possibly the whole show, with them chasing Mad Mod through the madhouse with the song playing in the background. Number 3, Apprentice Part 2. The season finale, of course, had to be here. The team bond being shown so well, Robin's acceptance that him and Slade are alike, which causes him to sacrifice himself knowing Slade wouldn't kill him because Slade hates losing as much as he does. 2, Masks. The birth of Red X, and Robin slowly losing his mind trying to go after Slade makes this episode so enjoyable. And my number 1 favorite episode from this season is Nevermore. Raven is my second favorite Titan, so I love the focus on her, and seeing the different versions of her are always so much fun and a really cool idea. Such an iconic episode. So there it is, my very long-winded discussion on Teen Titans Season 1. I tried my best to keep it concise and understandable, but I tend to get sidetracked and rant at times, so any questions you may have you can leave in the comment section, and I'll try to clear it up. This is my first video, but I still hope it's decent. I am doing a video on the rest of the seasons as well, and the movies Trouble in Tokyo and Teen Titans Go vs Teen Titans, so hopefully those are done within a reasonable time, but between work and music it might take a bit. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed. Leave your top 5 episodes from this season down in the comments, and thanks for watching.